Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, and welcome to episode 201, where we're going to dive into people pleasing. So one of the common behavior patterns that we highly sensitive people tend to fall into sometimes, or some of us at least, is what is oftentimes called people pleasing, and kind of like being extra nice, quote unquote. So today, a special guest and I are going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about what it looks like and what it leads to in relationships and in general, and why we do it and how it affects us, as well as talk about some ways to break free of this habit or pattern and ultimately really be true to ourselves as highly sensitive people in relationships and in life in general. So joining me today is Todd Smith. He's the creator of one of the most popular podcasts for highly sensitive people. It's called Stress Management for Highly Sensitive People. Definitely worth checking out. He's helped hundreds of HSPs break free from chronic stress and emotional overload using a powerful inquiry-based process that brings lasting peace without needing the world around you to change. So welcome, Todd. I'm really happy to have you on, and I really think our work is super aligned, including the inquiry process you use and that whole lasting peace without needing the world to change things too. For my work, it's more about peace and love without needing your partner to change, but I do think we have a lot in common, so I think today's going to be really fun and super informative to people. So again, welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. It's so great to be here.
People-pleasing is a topic I've kind of addressed, but I haven't called it people-pleasing, or maybe I've talked about it here and there. So I'm really excited to have a conversation where we really focus on people-pleasing. So let's dive right in and just talk about what your definition of people-pleasing might be, or how you might define it in the most simple terms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting one because being nice to people is not necessarily people-pleasing. And sometimes we can get black and white on it and think like you have to become a jerk to stop people-pleasing. That's not actually true. For me, people-pleasing is taking care of others or doing what others want without paying attention to what you want. So it's like leaving yourself out of the equation. It can look like people-pleasing and not be people-pleasing, but the way you can tell is if you're leaving yourself out, then that's when it's just not, you'll feel it. It doesn't feel healthy, it doesn't feel right, and there are a lot of repercussions.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's really important because, yeah, of course, like it actually can feel really good to be nice to people, to be sweet to people, to give of ourselves to people. And that does not necessarily mean we're people pleasing. But when we start sacrificing or we start pretending in a way, right? Like saying yes when we mean no.
Exactly. It's a kind of lying in a way. It's like, it's a lack of integrity. I'm putting you so far above me that I'm not included here. And so I'm not really a part of the experience. And it feels hollow and it feels empty.
Yeah. The episode on my podcast that I have really addressed sort of a facet of this in depth is called something along the lines of overcare. But the term that I have tended to use in the past has been overcare. And that definition for me is caring for others at our own expense. Yeah. So it's really, it's a piece of this. And one of the ways I like to think about people pleasing is at its heart, it's about seeking approval by being sweet or compliant or doing other people's bidding when something in us knows it's not right for us, right? It might be hard to hear that voice, but there's like you said, that word integrity, like there's a part of us that knows, right? Like when I was young, I very, very, very much remember I definitely had this tendency towards people pleasing. And I would like smile and nod my head when someone was talking about something when I knew inside I didn't agree with what they were saying, but I wouldn't say anything.
Yeah. It's like not showing up to the conversation, and we're keeping appearances to avoid some kind of conflict or disapproval, or as you said, seeking approval, and that keeps us outside of ourselves, and it actually costs us and costs the other person a relationship with the real you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And in a few minutes, I want to talk more about the cost of it, because I think on the surface, it can feel like it shouldn't cost anything to be like, so sweet to other people or so agreeable or so apologetic or whatever it is. But in general, I think in any kind of relationship, it costs us some things. And in an intimate relationship, it especially costs us. But before we get to the more of the sort of costs of it, I want to add one more thing. I know we talked before when we were talking about this topic together before we started recording. We talked about how one of my teachers always just said it straight like this: people pleasers are liars. So I love that you mentioned that piece. But I also think it kind of, and one other way to put people pleasing is sacrificing your truth and what you like and even who you are for approval or peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it sounds good at first, like compared to being a total jerk or a narcissist or something. It's like, oh, well, this is better. And we often justify or can tend to try to justify people pleasing as being the peacemakers or being the ones that don't make a big deal about things. But there's a world. Those are the two extremes. People pleasing on one extreme and maybe narcissism on the other extreme. And there's all kinds of gray areas in there where you can be showing up, be having a stand, having boundaries, at the same time that you're being kind and nice and listening and including the other people. So it's easy to just flip from one extreme to the other or be afraid that that's going to happen and then end up just keeping in the same pattern.
I think that's such a good point, because I do know a lot of highly sensitive people. For a lot of highly sensitive people, it can feel hard to say no or to set a boundary because somehow it feels like, I don't know, being harsh or something. But actually, that's, depending on the circumstance, it's very, very healthy for everyone involved. And you can be loving and kind and generous and also say no and set strong boundaries and all of this. So yes, it's not either or. It can be both and in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit more granular, I guess, nitty gritty about what does it actually maybe look like on a day-to-day level to people please, and maybe what that might look like inside a relationship, an intimate relationship. And maybe you can share a little bit of your own experience if you've had any with this, but also maybe what you've seen in other people.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used when I look back on that, I realize it's like I didn't really have a word for no. There was yes, which was kind of like I'm going along, but I don't necessarily agree. And then there was, oh my gosh, I'd love to, which was a definite yes. But there wasn't an actual word for no. It was almost a taboo word for me and maybe kind of in our family as well. And so I think that's one of the characteristics or kind of, I don't know, signs of people pleasing is that you default to yes. You agree before checking with yourself, seeing if you have the time or whether you have the energy. You just say yes. And then you're like, I'll make it work. And then you scramble. And of course, stress levels go up.
Right. So that's a really great, not to get too much into the cost, but that's a really good example of what it costs us, right? Because if we're saying yes, when what we really know is right is no, and we're trying to please everybody and do all the things that we've said yes to, we are going to stress ourselves out and be really overwhelmed, especially as highly sensitive people.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So there is a cost in there. Another one is just over explaining or over softening, which again sounds like a good thing. I don't want to be harsh or anything, but I can soften so much. My partner once told me, it's like, you put so much sugar on your no that I just end up eating all the sugar off of it and leave your no. Like that's like the shell or something that you just don't eat.
I love that.
And that's it. It's like I can be so amenable and bendable and apologetic and oh, if it's okay all these things can be great in the right measure, but when I'm trying to actually share a boundary, I have to make sure that that is seen and understood. And I guess one of the interesting realizations I had at one point was that sometimes people not liking it means that I was successful in presenting the boundary, because I tend to think I should present the boundary and then they're going to still like it, or I need them to still like it and be totally understanding and everything. And what happens is I get so much focused on the having them like it and understand it and be, just meeting me there, that I end up softening it so much, my actual boundary, that it's actually invisible. And especially when you're dealing with non-highly sensitive people, they are not seeing these little subtle things that I'm, that I'm seeing. And so they're just like, well, why didn't you just tell me you don't want to go? Because that would be too harsh. It would hurt your feelings.
Right. Totally.
I'm a highly sensitive person.
Yeah, well, that's really helpful, like, just to hear your experience around it, and totally resonates. I personally, I think like I said before, like, I think this was definitely a strong tendency for me in my younger life. And actually, interestingly, I find myself sort of falling back into that pattern more in social situations where I don't know people so well. But in my closer relationships in my marriage, it's like almost go in the opposite extreme.
And there is a balance always.
Yes.
What happened to the old you? I liked you better when you were just compliant and nice.
Yeah, totally. But I do think part of it's because of what I learned from my earliest sort of romantic relationships, where I was much more people pleasy, and like I feel like I got really kind of manipulated and taken advantage of, and I think I just was like, no, this will never happen again.
Yes, I think most of us can relate to that. I know I can. I'm going to give them what they want. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm not even in a relationship that I want to be in.
Exactly.
So this is people pleasing kind of can go in that direction. You can end up in relationships you're not even wanting to be in, or with friends that you don't want to be with, or it's like, I'll just hide over here and be nice, and everyone will like me, but I'm not liking myself. And in the end, they don't really like it either. So it's softening, this changing myself to be someone else. It has its value. It has its place. It's not that it's a bad thing, but there has to be enough connection to who I am for any of that to work.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to mention like two other sort of flavors just of what people pleasing can look or feel like. Because I think it can show up in various ways, right? Like it's not like everyone does it in all the same ways. And it may be like some listeners do have it in with certain people or certain types of interactions. So I just wanted to mention maybe two more things. Doing things for your significant other to make them feel good about you.
Yes.
Right? Even if it feels burdensome to you or overextending. And then this one might be more subtle, but like taking care of our spouses or our friends' feelings in an attempt to take care of our own. So and this is where it gets a little interesting. I mean, to me, I think this is so fascinating. And listeners to my podcast will kind of get this. But when we're taking care of another person's feelings, meaning like, oh, I want them to feel good. I want them to be happy. Like, I want them to feel good around me. it in a sort of twisted way, it's because we're trying to take care of our own feelings. Because it's like, if I take care of his feelings and he feels good, then I'll feel good. Or like, if he feels good about me, then I'll feel good about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. We're taking the long route instead of the shortcut.
Yeah.
We're trying to change them so that they feel good about us, so that we can feel good about us, which is a very complex and perilous path. Yeah.
And I think we could even go as far as saying people pleasing is a form of trying to control other people's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's an element of manipulation there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there are a few other signs as well, like just the whole mind reading thing, like, and as HSPs, we are good at that. We pick up on subtle changes in facial expressions and tones of voice, and
Yes.
we can end up almost like seeing something that somebody's showing a little sign of disappointment, and then changing our path of the conversation and changing our stance even, and adjusting to that. And so that's something we have to watch out for. I always like to say that people pleasing is not a part of the HSP trait. It is we have a tendency to fall into imbalance in that direction. But being HSP is just being sensitive. And that's a wonderful thing. But trying to control others or trying to just adjusting so much that we lose ourselves, that's more on the level of imbalance rather than on the level of trait.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, an important point. And I, unfortunately, I think it's not the trait itself, but it, like you said, it can be a tendency, like various other things, of course, that aren't innately part of the trait, but that can kind of go downstream of the trait or come downstream of the trait as an attempt to, kind of like what I was saying before, like it's oftentimes it's a backwards or long route, as you put it, to taking care of our own feelings, is these various tactics, unconscious tactics like people pleasing, that sometimes sort of seem like or end up kind of being a little manipulative of other people's feelings so that our feelings in the end ultimately are taken care of. But again, many of them are what I would maybe call backfiring tactics. Like they're generally not the most successful or easiest or most straightforward path to actually feeling great, which is ultimately our goal.
Yeah, they're basically coping mechanisms, and coping mechanisms work to a certain degree, but they're not the most mature solution to a problem. It's something, and what do we use when we need to cope? We build on our strengths. So one of our strengths is being able to mind read almost.
Yes.
So, well, of course, we're going to use that to our advantage to avoid their disappointment, and it works to a certain degree, and that's why we've adopted it, but it's not the real solution, and it ends up causing other problems, which, we're familiar with as well.
Yeah, that was so beautifully put. I want to emphasize that we're not saying people pleasing is bad or something's wrong with anyone who does it. It's actually, in my opinion, and I'm sure you would agree, Todd, its intention is benevolent. And I love to reiterate that over and over for any of these sort of coping mechanisms we fall into. It's the intention, our sort of unconscious intention is very benevolent, right? It just doesn't always lead to the best results.
Yeah, it's one-sided. We're focused on them. And all we have to do is broaden our awareness to focus on them and us. And then we can be kind to them, but also kind to us. And it's just, there's a bigger solution than just putting all the attention on pleasing them.
Ooh, yes. I'm really excited to talk about the antidotes to people pleasing and how we kind of break free of that. Before we get there, let's just touch on why. I mean, I think we've already shed a little light on why we might do this, but is there anything you kind of want to emphasize there? Like, why else might we do this other than it's a coping mechanism and such?
When we look at what it means to be a highly sensitive person, we experience emotions more strongly than others. It's built into our nature. And so when other people are upset, when other people don't like things, when other people give us their negative feedback, we experience those emotions more strongly than other people. And so we naturally, just like intelligent, we don't want to have that huge rock of our boat. And so we try to minimize it. This is our attempt to minimize overwhelm by trying to control the environment in a way that it presents softness back to us, and then we get to enjoy kind of a quietness. So there is intelligence to it. It's just that, as we've seen, it's not all the way. It's not all that it's cracked up to be. There's other pieces of the puzzle that are also important.
Yes, I think that's a really beautiful way of putting it. I do think there's also, like, we truly do want other people to feel good around us, not just because we want approval, right? So that's lovely. And also, if other people love us, if other people approve of us, if they feel good in our presence because we are so pleasing, we're so kind and giving and compliant and whatever, then like there's that hope that they will love us and approve of us, and that will give us permission to feel really good about ourselves. Of course, it's conflict. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but like conflict feels, because of our deep feelings, conflict and the emotions that may come up around conflict can feel really heavy and hard for us as HSPs. And so if we do our best to do everything to avoid conflict, then, like you said, we don't rock the boat, and we can feel more peace. But it doesn't always lead to feeling more peace, right?
Like temporary peace, right? We've avoided the conflict in this moment, but now we've kicked the can down the road, and then resentment starts to build, and then bigger conflicts can come because now eventually it comes to light that I was not really telling my truth in that situation, and it goes from there. So it's a short-term win, but
it's a long-term cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly. Well, so let's talk more about that. You mentioned resentment. That's a big one. Actually, maybe I'll just tell my little story about this, just a recent story with one of my lovely, amazing clients who was kind of reflecting back on a pattern in her relationship that she's actually moved beyond, or is moving beyond. But she was telling me how for like 10 years or more in her marriage, she let her husband be in control of the TV remote, like 100%. So when they'd watch TV together, he was in charge. Like that was just their silent agreement, right? Unspoken agreement. And she never asked him to watch something that she wanted or requested to take a turn of being in charge of that. And interestingly, in her mind, she blamed him for it, right? And she even told me that she had thought of it like, he forces me to watch these shows that I don't like. He forced me were her words, right? But of course, as we were talking about it, she realized really clearly that he never forced her. She just didn't tell him what she wanted.
Right.
She just sat and watched, right? She really forced herself in a way. So until she saw that, she actually felt really resentful, of course, towards him about it. But really, it was her lack of assertiveness, her not speaking up, her not requesting, and her not wanting to rock the boat that created this.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. So that it shows where this can lead. Like the more aware we become of what we are doing, the more we have choice there that we may not have known that we had until we see that. And it opens up a new kind of relationship, a new kind of connection that's possible with the people that you love.
Which I think is one reason we're doing this podcast, right? Is like helping people start to look and see. Because I think what you're saying is as soon as we become aware of this pattern or this tendency, or even in just one situation, right? We start to see, oh, maybe I contributed to that, right? Maybe part of me is complicit in this situation. We can start to step out of it and create a new pattern.
Exactly. You step out of being a victim, because things happen to victims. It's their fault. They're doing something to us. But when we see our part, then we become empowered, because now we can continue in that direction or not continue, but we're not a victim. And that feels more open and more spacious and more connecting ultimately.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the victim thing is so disconnecting.
So I wanted to share a few other places this can go. First of all, resentment is a big one, and kind of passive compliance. Another is chronic fatigue and anxiety. You basically can end up running yourself out, because it takes energy to to live a lie in a way, and it's hard. It's like we're not getting what we need, and so it can run our batteries down.
Totally. We're not. I mean, I think if we're doing other things for other people, for pleasing them, and we're not here in ourselves, taking care of ourselves, of course, that's our batteries are going to run low fast.
Not to mention the actual physical work that we end up doing,
Exactly.
That is one of the other signs, is sort of this like invisible labor that we give to people, without them even necessarily asking for it. And so we just take on more and more and more on top of not getting what we need. It's a perfect storm for fatigue and anxiety.
Yes,
Overwhelm.
totally.
Another one is lower self-trust, because you're always saying yes against your body's no, and it sort of teaches your brain that you can't protect yourself, you can't take care of yourself, and so you end up starting to feel like who am I? And it can even go into like a blur of what. Like, who really am I, and what do I want? When I was a kid, I never knew what I wanted to. I never knew what kind of music I liked. I never knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. I never knew, because I was too afraid to be seen or to take a stand, or to show up in that way. And so, that's a problem.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And if your attention is on someone else or other people all the time, how can your attention be on yourself to get to know yourself?
Exactly. And we tend to not give as much weight as we maybe should for these little things, little resentments that we have, like just the remote kind of thing. Like, because what happens is these pile up in different areas of a relationship, and then they can turn into larger conflicts later. And then the person's like, where is this coming from? You're just like brimming with anger, and why are you exploding all over me? All I did was just put the fork in the wrong place.
Exactly. Yeah, these little things really do add up.
Yeah. And then the other thing it can mess up is just the imbalance in the roles that we have. You can end up being like where you become the over-functioning partner, and then the other one is doing less, or vice versa. And there's a feeling of being unseen. It's not a feeling of partnership, but a feeling of like just trying to keep the peace somehow. And it gets complicated and doesn't feel balanced. So
I think that one's so important for so many of my listeners. Like the not being seen, the doing so much and not feeling like you have a team in your partner, that can result from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Another one that I think I want to make sure we mention is this sort of sense of maybe your spouse not ever getting to really know the real you, right? Because if you're not speaking up, you're not telling your truth, you're holding it back. And that's part of people pleasing, right? Again, lying, not being honest. And you're not necessarily lying, you're just withholding parts of yourself.
You're going along with the other, and it's all about them. And then where's you? You deprive your spouse of getting to know the real you and your preferences. Deprive yourself of that too.
Yeah, exactly. You deprive yourself of that. And then back to the not being seen piece. Like, how can your partner really see you and really love the real you, which we all want, right? When you're not showing the real you.
That's right. And I think that's one of the things we tend to forget, because we often, as HSPs, we tend to internalize shame a little bit. And so we tend to think we're less than or not as good or don't have as much to offer or something like that. And the more you study the HSP trait and just know yourself, we have something beautiful to offer to the world and to relationships and to our families. And so when we give a chance for that to be seen and to be like recognized and brought to light, it's a gift to everyone. It's something really special that is worth sharing with those that we love.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And that's absolutely a piece of, actually, one of the things I wanted to share in a few minutes about what it takes to break this pattern. Sort of just circling back for a moment, why are HSPs especially prone towards this pattern? I think one of the reasons is because we've been told, so many of us have been told our whole lives that we're different, right? That we don't quite belong. We felt sort of like the black sheep because of our sensitivity, right? So many of my clients have been like, everyone always told me I was too sensitive or too emotional or too intense. And we've been made to feel in some sense that something is slightly wrong with us. And so people pleasing, again, is that coping mechanism to try to gain that worthiness that we're not sure we have. So I love that you brought this piece in of like, actually, HSPs are so gifted and so approval worthy, just innately.
Yeah. Let's let that out of the box a little bit. Let's just, even a tiny 1 millimeter like opening can bring so much light and so much kindness and so much goodness, and also for others to see what our preferences are, like what I want, what I'm interested in, and they're usually beautiful things. So that can be inspiring for people as well. But it takes
yeah. I wonder if people have, for any listeners who haven't yet seen, actually maybe the best place to go in my work anyway is the 3rd podcast episode, where I just talk about all the innate gifts that we highly sensitive people bring to relationships. That might be a nice reminder for anyone who wants to sort of drop into this sense of how wonderful you are innately, because heading into how do we, tips for breaking free of this people-pleasing pattern. It's one of the things is very much about what I might call insourcing our worth and approval instead of outsourcing it, right? Because when we're people-pleasing, we're outsourcing it. We're looking for the source of our approval and our good feelings and our worthiness to come from another person. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We're reflecting, we're looking outward for self-validation or approval, and it's not a very secure way to do it, because the world is totally changing, and it's just people have their own things going on. So we have to look to ourselves. Yeah, that's great.
There is so much that we can do there within ourselves to see our validity, our value, our worth, and to build up that knowing and really like belief in ourselves, no matter what other people think of us. We can really work on that. I have a whole podcast. It's called Insourcing Validation. I think it's number 34, which talks in depth about this, but no one else's opinion determines your worth or your value. And the most important thing, in my opinion, and I would love to hear your thoughts too, of course, Todd, is just it can take some practice and some work to actually cultivate a really loving and high opinion of ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's totally worth the work.
Yeah. And I think the fear people have is that if I start cultivating that, then I'm going to become egotistical in some way.
Right.
And the way I like to look at it is that it's in terms of balance. Right now, for most of us, the balance is on the opposite side of feeling too little self-regard and thinking that there's something wrong with us, or that we need to change, or that we're too sensitive, all those things. And so the self-esteem is actually low. And so bringing in like quote unquote ego is actually a good thing to a certain degree. Of course, you can go too far with it, and that would be the other extreme. But the danger of an HSP doing that is like slim to nil.
Yeah, totally. And it's actually like not even really the same thing to have like a positive self-regard, a healthy self-esteem, and being arrogant. Or
Yeah.
like when we start comparing ourselves to others, that starts to bring in that sort of egotistical arrogance piece potentially, particularly when we're like, I'm better than, right? But that's not what this is about at all. This is like, I'm amazing, you're amazing.
Yeah.
We're amazing together.
It's just owning that side of ourselves, which is also true. We're not exaggerating or making ourselves out to be better than we are. That would be like egotistical, but just owning the truths about ourselves that balance the other side, which is that I'm not good enough and all of that.
Yeah. Is there one like question you might ask people or one little exercise you might give someone to do that?
Each situation is slightly different. When I tend to do this kind of balancing or inner work in general, it tends to not be as effective because it's so global. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, oh my gosh, okay, well, how do I see a different side of that? And yes, I can find kind of some examples of how I'm okay and better and all this, but it's general. Like the mind loves to hide in generalities. And so these are just big umbrella theories that we've developed about ourselves.
Yes.
If you want to break a theory, go into a specific situation and find a specific moment where you were believing that and find the anomaly in there. It only takes one anomaly to break a whole theory, right?
Perfect. So that would be like go into the situation, some specific situation where you didn't feel good enough, for example, and, get the specifics down about what that was and what you were thinking, believing about yourself, where you didn't feel good enough. And then where is like one piece of evidence that you were good enough in that situation.
Yeah. Exactly that. And then that informs the bigger theory that we've been carrying. And it might not collapse the whole thing. It might, but it might at least take some of the wind out of its sails. And if you repeat this in different situations as they come up, you will find yourself just not believing that story as much because you've seen the evidence to the contrary. And that's how balance begins.
Yes, I think that's such an important point to use something specific and not just these generalized things. So cool. Beautiful. So do you have any other tips or ideas about how to help people be more honest with themselves, more true to themselves, and stop people pleasing?
Sure. I would say these kinds of things you can do fall into two categories. One is just things you can do in the moment, little practical things, more of just approaches you can use or strategies you can try.
Yeah.
The other is more doing the inner work that underlies, like that allows you to question the beliefs that support this kind of thinking. So, I kind of say outer work and inner work, both are important.
Yeah.
And that actually, those are two of the pillars that I consider important for stress management for highly sensitive people: inner work, outer work, and then understanding the HSP trait. Those are the three pillars.
Beautiful.
But for example, in terms of outer work, one of my favorites is to start using the option of pausing when somebody asks you, like kind of having a two-part answer to their questions. Like, okay, yeah, great question. Thank you for asking me. Let me just check and get back to you.
Perfect.
Oh my God, that gives me so much time, so much freedom. Then I can go into my room. I can go back to my life for a day or 2 days or however long I need. And I can feel it and just start paying attention to myself. Like, where's the leaning? And I can play devil's advocate with myself and play different sides. And then, but as I listen to myself more and more, I'm going to have a preference. And then I can come back and actually say yes or no in a much easier way. If I'm having trouble finding the actual preference inside of me, first of all, giving myself time. Like I like to say I have infinite time to make a decision instead of I have to make it by tomorrow. Because
So good.
HSPs don't do well with time pressure.
No, it's true.
My brain freezes up. I'm like, and I can't think. So I have time and I have a chance to check with myself. And it's a matter of asking myself, what do I want? What feels right to me? Or even doing hypotheticals, like if I had to pick, what would I choose? Or, like if I was to be 5% more honest than usual, like where does it lean towards, So these are kinds of little practical things that you can do, but mainly it's about giving yourself space for you to go back and connect with you and ask yourself, what do you want? And then feel free to explore without the pressure of their awareness on you and find that within yourself. Then you can go back and have that conversation. Now, the other side is more inner work, which is I use something called the work of Byron Katie, which is 4 questions and turnarounds, and it's an amazing little process. It's done after the fact, so it's more preventive. Let's say I had a time where I found myself people pleasing and it didn't work for me. I feel stressed about it. Then I'm going to go in and look at the thoughts I was believing at that time, question those thoughts, look at the opposites of those and see if they may be as true or truer, and start to expand my vision of that situation. And what happens is you start seeing options that you didn't see there. And so this is kind of a ongoing practice. I've been doing it for many years, and it just opens you and opens you and opens you. We can say along those same lines, deep meditation, like silent, deep meditation, deep, restful meditation, also cultures that habit of being in touch with yourself. All these things help in a more general way. It's a combination of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, you mentioned the work of Byron Katie, and as well that's some of the work I also have been immersed in and use, and sort of it's transformed a little bit exactly how I do that, but it's basically the same process. And one thing that my listeners will have maybe heard me kind of call that type of work is thought work. So as you're speaking, I'm just thinking, like, a lot of what I've talked about on this podcast, specifically like around thought work, can be incredibly helpful for breaking these patterns, as well as so many of the things you just mentioned. Sort of just throwing this other little piece in here, because I do talk about the nervous system a lot on the podcast. People pleasing tends to fall into sort of a category of nervous system dysregulation that people have heard of as fawning, called fawning. It's one of the behaviors that can happen when our nervous systems are dysregulated. And a lot of what you were just saying about, like, giving yourself space and imagining that you have infinite time to make the decision. And these things are ways of talking almost to our nervous system and allowing it to calm down and get back into that, what we call calm and connect part of our nervous system. That actually is the state that we're the most connected to ourself in. And we can really hear what's true for us from that state. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of put that in some of my own language, but I think
I love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, really cool. I was just thinking another tip that you can use with regards to saying no, for example, is the combination of no and I care, right? I appreciate you, or I love you, or it's just like holding that no doesn't have to be a harsh thing necessarily.
Yeah.
Now, you can go to the extreme with this and, like I say, sugarcoat your no so much that the no is not seen. Like, that's not going to work either. But having a little balance in there, I think, is really helpful for HSPs, where we do care. That is part of our nature. And the no can coexist with caring. And that opens something, I think, a bigger space between two people.
Yeah, totally. There's that whole, I think there's a podcast episode I made early on called I Love You and No.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that concept and it's so important. I also teach, I'm sure you've heard this, and it's not like I am the only person who teaches this. It's a well-known thing. But it's the love sandwich, right? Like my husband actually introduced me to it. And I think it's lovely because it's like, the bread is, oh, thank you so much for the invitation. That really means a lot to me. Actually, today I really need to stay home and take care of myself, but I love that you thought of me. Right? So you're like bookending it. Maybe that's too much sugar. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cultural too. Like it's I think in the U.S. it's very common, and in North America, in other countries is less. So like there's a cultural element to it. But I think the idea is sound, that there are two sentiments that are happening simultaneously, and one is no, like I'm holding to myself. The other is I also still love and respect you. And this coexistence of opposites is where growth happens, where expansion happens. You have to have a bigger view of things to be able to hold both yourself and the other person. The problem is when our vision is smaller, when our awareness is smaller, our nervous system can only handle a smaller view, then we flip from looking at ourselves to looking to the other person, to looking at ourselves. We can't do both at the same time. And so any growth of consciousness that expands your awareness so that you can hold opposites together at the same time, that's going to be super helpful with this kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah. I wanted to just add one final little thought here, which is, and I kind of teach this when I teach boundaries. So this is really relevant to what you're saying. When we say no, or when we set a boundary, or when we're doing something for ourselves, when we're caring for ourselves and not just the other person, it benefits the whole relationship. Like when we're talking about a marriage or a friendship, it's actually good for the relationship. So it can be really good to remember that like when I'm doing something for myself because I really feel that's important, it's not at the other person's expense, right? If I do well, if I'm doing well, that's actually incredibly beneficial for the entire relationship. It's beneficial for our partner. It's beneficial for us as well. So it's actually a win-win when we're willing to take care of ourselves, not abandon ourselves, and ultimately kind of please ourselves. And not always, right? I mean, there's a balance, as we've been talking about. Like it's not one or the other extreme. It's kind of this both and that we've been talking about.
In a relationship, there's time for compromise. Like I'm not going to just only get what I want, but I also shouldn't never get what I want.
Yes, exactly. So I always just like to invite people to really remember that, because it can be helpful to kind of, when your inclination, your habit is to go people please, to remind yourself, oh, actually, maybe in this case, it would be good for me to do what's good for me because I'm learning to trust that that's good for the relationship as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Todd, I know people listening would love to hear where they can learn more about you. So will you share that with us, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a couple ways you can get more information or learn more about what I do. One is my podcast, which is Stress Management for Highly Sensitive People. You just type HSP and you'll find it there. And the other is my website, trueinnerfreedom.com. And I have several different things you can check out there. One is I have an HSP stress test, which you can take, which gives you your kind of where you are on the HSP spectrum, as well as what are the main areas of stress, and how you're doing with depression, anxiety, stress levels as well. And so I invite you to take that test and sort of see where you are. It's a nice tool that you can use.
Amazing.
And then finally, I have a 6-month program called the HSP Inner Freedom Program. And if you want to do a deep dive into how to become more resilient and less stressed as a highly sensitive person, then I have a lot of support there for you. So that is also at trueinnerfreedom.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for spending this little while with us talking about this really important topic. I appreciate your wisdom and insight and experience around all of this. It's been a true joy to talk about it with you today.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to talk with you as well.
All right, my friends, be oh so well.